I'll never forget the way Brandon smiled at me when he said it. We were standing in the grand ballroom of Riverside Country Club, my late husband Robert's favorite place, surrounded by white roses, twinkling fairy lights, and 200 chairs arranged in perfect rows for tomorrow's ceremony. The wedding I'd spent $85,000 planning. The wedding at my daughter's dream venue. The wedding where I was supposed to walk her down the aisle because her father couldn't. Brandon had his arm around my shoulders, pulling me close like we were the best of friends. He smelled like expensive cologne and champagne. "Dorothy," he said, his voice dripping with that charm that had fooled me for 8 months. "I've been thinking about what Emily and I really need to start our life together." My heart swelled. Here it comes, I thought. He's going to thank me. Maybe even call me Mom for the first time. "You know what would be the perfect gift?" He leaned in closer, his smile widening. "You disappearing from our lives forever. Just letting us be our own family. No more advice, no more dropping by, no more involvement. We need space to become who we're meant to be. Without you." The champagne glass nearly slipped from my hand. The room tilted. Behind us, the wedding planner was adjusting floral arrangements. A server walked by with a tray. Everything looked normal, but nothing would ever be normal again. I don't understand," I whispered. "Sure you do." His grip on my shoulder tightened just slightly. "Emily's been trying to tell you for months. You're suffocating her. This Victorian house thing, the trust fund, constantly being involved. It's too much. She wants her independence. We both do." He paused, studying my face like I was a bug under a microscope. "So here's what's going to happen. After the wedding, you're going to step back. Way back. Maybe move to that condo community you looked at. Sell the big house. Emily mentioned you were thinking about it anyway. Give us space to live our lives without your shadow over everything." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Where was Emily? Did she know he was saying this? "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Dorothy." His voice dropped lower, colder. "You're a smart woman. You've had your life, your marriage, your time. This is Emily's turn. And honestly, the greatest gift you could give us is to just disappear. Start over somewhere else, somewhere far from here." He patted my shoulder twice, like I was a dog he was dismissing, and walked away toward the bar, where Emily stood laughing with her bridesmaids. I stood there alone, surrounded by thousands of dollars of flowers I'd paid for, in a venue I'd booked, for a wedding I'd funded, holding a champagne glass that suddenly felt like poison in my hand. Have you ever had someone you loved tell you that you're worth nothing? That the best thing you could do is simply cease to exist? Because I had exactly 18 hours to decide. Would I disappear like he wanted? Or would I disappear in a way he'd never forget? Let me back up and tell you how this started. How I went from being a grieving widow, planning her daughter's dream wedding, to standing in that ballroom, realizing I'd been playing the fool in someone else's con game all along. 2 years before that devastating night in the ballroom, I buried my husband Robert on a Tuesday morning in October. 42 years of marriage, ended by a heart attack on a golf course. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. The house felt enormous without him. Every room echoed. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. reaching for his side of the bed, finding only cold sheets. Emily had stayed with me for 3 weeks after the funeral, but then her law firm needed her back in Chicago. "Mom, you'll be okay," she'd said, hugging me at the airport. "You're strong. You've always been the strong one." But I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. My name is Dorothy Margaret Harrison. Everyone calls me Dot. I'm 68 years old, and before Robert died, I thought I had my life figured out. We'd spent 5 years restoring our Victorian house together, turning it into something beautiful. Robert had been a real estate developer, successful enough that we'd invested in 3 apartment buildings over the years. I'd taught elementary school for 35 years before retiring at 65. We had plans: travel, spoiling future grandchildren, growing old together in the house we loved. His death shattered everything. For 18 months, I drifted. I stopped going to book club. I let the garden Robert loved grow wild. I ate cereal for dinner most nights, standing at the kitchen counter because sitting at our dining table for one felt like admitting defeat. The only thing that kept me going was my Wednesday phone calls with Emily. Then, in April of last year, everything changed. Emily called on a Thursday, not Wednesday, and her voice had that electric quality I hadn't heard since she was a little girl getting ready for Christmas. "Mom, I met someone. His name is Brandon. And Mom, I think he might be the one." My heart soared. My baby girl, happy again. Maybe this was what we both needed. New life, new joy, moving forward from grief. She brought him home 3 weeks later for Sunday dinner. I spent all of Saturday cooking Robert's favorite pot roast, cleaning the house until it sparkled, putting fresh flowers in every room. I wanted everything perfect. When they arrived, Brandon stepped out of Emily's car, and I saw him for the first time. Tall, handsome in that television actor way, wearing a perfectly fitted suit even for casual Sunday dinner. His smile was brilliant white against his tan. "Mrs. Harrison," he said, taking both my hands in his, "Emily has told me so much about you. And please, call me Brandon. I hope we're going to be family. Family." The word made my eyes fill with tears. That first dinner, Brandon was perfect. He complimented the pot roast. He asked about the photos on the mantel. He listened intently when I talked about Robert, even tearing up when I mentioned how much Robert had loved this house. "This house is incredible," Brandon said, running his hand along the original oak banister. "The craftsmanship, the history, places like this are rare. This is generational wealth, family legacy. Emily's so lucky to have grown up here." At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now I realize it was reconnaissance. Over the next 3 months, Brandon became a fixture in my life. He and Emily visited every other weekend. He'd help me with projects around the house, fixing the porch light, cleaning the gutters. "Dorothy, you shouldn't be doing this stuff alone," he'd say. "You need someone looking after you." I was so grateful, so touched. In July, he proposed. Emily called me, crying happy tears. They were getting married next June, 11 months away. Would I help plan it? Could we use the country club? Would I walk her down the aisle? "Of course," I said, crying too. "Whatever you want, sweetheart. Whatever you need." That's when things started changing. Subtle at first. In August, Brandon started asking questions. Casual questions, dropped into conversations while we washed dishes or worked in the garden. "So Dorothy, with Robert gone, have you thought about updating your will? Emily mentioned you had some investment properties. Do you have everything in order? This house must be worth quite a bit now. Have you had it appraised recently?" Emily said something about a trust fund Robert set up. "Are there any conditions on that?" I answered honestly. The house was worth about $2.3 million. Yes, there were investment properties. The trust fund for Emily was substantial, but she wouldn't get full access until she was 35 or I died, whichever came first. "Or if you release it early," Brandon said. "Right? You could give her access whenever you want?" "Technically, yes, but Robert and I set it up that way for good reasons." Something flickered across Brandon's face. Gone so fast, I thought I'd imagined it. Then in September, Emily started pulling away. Our Wednesday phone calls became shorter. When I'd suggest weekend visits, she'd have excuses. "Brandon and I need couple time, Mom. We're planning a wedding. It's stressful." In October, I flew to Chicago to help Emily pick out her wedding dress, but she seemed irritated with every suggestion I made. "That's too traditional, Mom. That's too expensive. Can you just let me make my own choices?" Finally, in the dressing room, I asked gently, "Sweetheart, have I done something wrong?" She sighed. "Mom, you haven't done anything wrong. Brandon says you're having trouble letting go, that you're treating me like I'm still 12. He thinks maybe you're using the wedding planning as a way to avoid dealing with Dad's death." "Brandon said that?" "He's not wrong, Mom. You need to build your own life. Stop making me and Brandon your whole world." I left Chicago that night, instead of staying the weekend. Emily barely noticed. November brought the incident that should have woken me up. I came home from book club I'd finally rejoined to find Brandon in my house, alone. "Brandon, what are you doing here?" He jumped, nearly dropping the folder he'd been reading at Robert's desk. "Dorothy, I thought you'd be gone longer. Emily asked me to grab some old photo albums for the wedding slideshow." But he wasn't in the room where we kept photo albums. He was in the study, where I kept financial documents. "The albums are in the hall closet," I said slowly. "Right." I got turned around. That brilliant smile again. "I'll just grab them and get out of your hair." He left quickly. Too quickly. When I checked the study later, things had been moved. Papers were in slightly different positions. I told myself I was being paranoid. Grief was making me suspicious, but I started being more careful, more watchful. In December, at Christmas dinner, Brandon brought up my future. "Dorothy, have you thought about downsizing? This house is huge for one person. All these stairs, the maintenance. What if you fell and no one found you for hours?" Emily nodded. "Mom, we saw this great condo community. 55 and over, amazing amenities. Want us to get you some information?" "I'm 68, not 80, I said. "And I love this house. I'm not ready to leave." "But you will eventually," Brandon pressed. "Have you thought about what happens to it?" Silence fell over the table. Emily and Brandon exchanged a look, a long, meaningful look that excluded me entirely. That night, lying in bed, I realized something that made my blood run cold. They weren't asking if I'd sell the house. They were asking when. The next morning, I called my neighbor Maggie Chen. Maggie had been a lawyer for 40 years before retiring. "Maggie," I said over tea in her kitchen, "I think something's wrong." I told her everything. The questions about money, Brandon being in my study, the pressure to sell, Emily's increasing distance. Maggie listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Dorothy," she finally said, "I think you need to hire a private investigator, because everything you're describing sounds like a con. And you're the mark," I wanted to argue, to defend my daughter. But deep down, I knew Maggie was right. That's when I decided to stop being blind and start paying attention. That's when I became a detective in my own life. Detective James Rivera came to my house on a Wednesday morning in late January. He was a quiet man in his mid-50s, with kind eyes and the firm handshake of someone who meant business. Maggie had vouched for him, and that was enough for me. "Mrs. Harrison," he said, settling into the chair across from me in the living room. My friend Maggie explained the situation. "Before we proceed, I need to be honest with you. Most of the time when I investigate someone's family member, I find nothing alarming. Miscommunications, personality conflicts, but nothing criminal or sinister. You might be spending money to confirm that your daughter simply wants independence." "I understand," I said, "but I need to know. One way or another, I need to know." He nodded. "Then let's start with the basics. Brandon Mitchell, age 34, marketing executive. Is that correct?" "That's what he's told us. We'll verify everything. His employment, his education credentials, his financial situation, his criminal record, if any. I'll also run a comprehensive background check, including previous relationships if possible. This usually takes 2 to 3 weeks. What if Emily finds out I'm doing this? She won't. Not from me. But Mrs. Harrison, if I find something concerning, you'll need to decide what to do with that information. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Emily's face on the day she introduced me to Brandon. The joy, the hope, the love. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I need the truth." Rivera left with a deposit check and a promise to call within 3 weeks. Those 3 weeks were torture. I went through the motions of wedding planning, confirming the florist, approving the menu, addressing invitations in my careful cursive. Emily and I spoke on our Wednesday calls, but the conversations felt hollow. I was acting, performing the role of the supportive mother while my mind spun with questions. Meanwhile, I started paying closer attention, really paying attention. In early February, Brandon and Emily came for a visit. We were going over seating charts in the dining room when Brandon's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and stood up quickly. "I need to take this work thing. Be right back." He walked into the kitchen, but I could hear fragments of his conversation through the door. "Not until after June. Timeline is the issue. Yes, I know about the trust, but I can't access it until... No, the mother has to release it, or she's being difficult about the house, too." My blood turned to ice. I looked at Emily, but she was focused on her laptop, typing emails, completely unconcerned about Brandon's conversation. When he came back, his smile was in place. "Sorry about that. Where were we?" "Who was that?" I asked casually. "Just my business partner. We're working on a new venture, lots of details to iron out." He leaned over my shoulder, pointing at the seating chart. "I think we should put my college friends at table 7, not 8. Business partner? Emily had never mentioned Brandon having a business partner. She told me he worked for a marketing firm, not that he owned his own business. That night, After they left, I made a decision. I bought a small recording device online, the kind that looks like a pen. I felt guilty, sneaky, like I was betraying my own daughter, but I kept hearing Brandon's voice. The mother has to release it. He wasn't talking about me like I was a person. He was talking about me like I was an obstacle. 2 days later, Detective Rivera called. "Mrs. Harrison, we need to meet. Today, if possible. My office, not your home." My hands shook as I drove downtown. The receptionist showed me into a conference room where Rivera sat with a thick folder spread across the table. "I found some things," he said without preamble. "None of it is good." He opened the folder. Inside were printouts, bank statements, credit reports, newspaper clippings. Brandon Mitchell, age 34, that part is true. He does work at Premier Marketing Solutions, but not as an executive. He's a mid-level account coordinator making $52,000 a year. He did start his own digital marketing business 3 years ago, but it failed within 18 months, leaving him with significant debt. Rivera pulled out a credit report. Numbers in red jumped out at me. His current debt load is $87,000. Credit cards, a personal loan, and a payment plan with the IRS for back taxes. His credit score is 580. Mrs. Harrison, this man is drowning financially. I stared at the papers. Brandon drove a nice car, wore expensive clothes, took Emily to upscale restaurants. How is he affording his lifestyle? That's the question. And here's where it gets interesting. Rivera pulled out another document. 6 years ago, Brandon was engaged to a woman named Vanessa Chen. Her mother was a widow, owned a successful chain of dry cleaning businesses. The engagement lasted 10 months. What happened? According to the police report, the mother, Mrs. Linda Chen, filed a restraining order against Brandon 2 weeks before the wedding. She claimed he'd stolen jewelry and attempted to forge her signature on property documents. Brandon denied everything, and Vanessa backed him up. But Mrs. Chen had evidence. The engagement was broken off. No charges were filed because Mrs. Chen didn't want to put her daughter through a trial. My chest felt tight. He's done this before. It appears so. There's also a previous girlfriend, 5 years before Vanessa, another woman from a wealthy family. That relationship ended suddenly as well, though I haven't been able to confirm details. "Emily," I whispered. "Does Emily know any of this?" "I don't know. But Mrs. Harrison? There's more." He pulled out what looked like a real estate document. "Last week, Brandon made an appointment with a real estate agent. He inquired about listing a property at your address." The room spun. "He what?" "He told the agent he was handling the sale for a family member who was moving to assisted living. He asked about expected sale price, timeline, commission structure. The agent assumed he had authorization." "He's planning to sell my house," I said, the words barely audible. "He's planning to sell my house, and I'm still living in it." Rivera's expression was grim. "Mrs. Harrison, I think Brandon believes that once he marries Emily, he'll have access to your assets, either through Emily inheriting early or through some form of coercion." "Coercion?" "The assisted living comments, the pressure to sell. He's creating a narrative that you're declining, that you can't handle living alone, that you need to be taken care of. If Emily believes that, and if you were to give her power of attorney, she could sell the house, release the trust funds, all of it." "Yes." I sat back in my chair, feeling like I'd been punched. "My daughter is marrying a con artist." "It looks that way. The question is, what do you want to do about it?" I thought about Emily, my beautiful, smart, successful daughter. How would I tell her? Would she even believe me? She was so in love, so committed to Brandon. She'd already distanced herself from me at his encouragement. "I need more proof," I said finally. "Proof she can't deny. Can you keep investigating?" "Yes, but Mrs. Harrison, you need to be careful. If Brandon suspects you're onto him, he might accelerate his timeline or become dangerous." "I'll be careful. But I'm not giving up my home, my life, or my daughter without a fight." Over the next 8 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. I installed security cameras in my house, hidden ones that recorded continuously. I kept the recording pen with me whenever Emily and Brandon visited. I documented every financial question, every pressure tactic, every strange comment. And I found things. Oh God, I found things. In March, I discovered that Brandon had been going through my mail. I came home from grocery shopping early and caught him at my desk again. This time, he had my bank statements, my brokerage reports, my property tax records spread out in front of him. "What are you doing?" I demanded. He didn't even look embarrassed. "Emily asked me to help you organize your finances. She's worried you're getting overwhelmed, mixing up bills." "I'm just trying to help, Dorothy. I didn't ask for help, and Emily didn't mention this to me, because she knew you'd react like this, defensive, like we're attacking you. We're not. We're trying to make sure you're taken care of. Get out of my desk. Get out of my house." His expression changed. The warm mask slipped, and for just a moment I saw cold calculation underneath. "Dorothy, I think you need to calm down. This kind of paranoid reaction is exactly what Emily's worried about. Are you taking your medications? Have you been sleeping okay?" He was trying to gaslight me. Right there, in my own home, he was trying to make me doubt my own sanity. "Get out." He left, but not before taking a photo of one of my bank statements with his phone. I saw him do it. I called Rivera immediately. "He's escalating. What do I do?" "Document everything. And Mrs. Harrison, change your locks. Today. Don't tell Emily you're doing it. Just do it." I changed the locks that afternoon. 2 weeks later, in early April, Emily called with cheerful news. "Mom, Brandon and I have been talking. We want to give you something to look forward to after the wedding. How would you feel about taking a long trip? Maybe a cruise or a tour of Europe? Our wedding gift to you, 6 weeks, all expenses paid, the vacation of a lifetime." 6 weeks. My mind raced. That's generous, but 6 weeks is a long time. "You deserve it. You've been through so much with Dad passing. This would be good for you. And honestly, Brandon and I were thinking, while you're gone, we could sort through the house, help you downsize a bit. You know, clear out Dad's things, organize everything. Make it easier for you. We'd even stay here to keep an eye on the place." There it was, 6 weeks away while they had full access to my house, my documents, my entire life. "Let me think about it," I managed to say. "Of course, no pressure, just think about it soon, okay? We'd need to book everything." After we hung up, I listened to the recording 3 times. Emily's voice sounded strange, rehearsed, like she was reading from a script. Brandon was coaching her. I was sure of it. Have you ever listened to someone you love lie to you and realize they'd become a stranger? Detective Rivera's next report arrived in mid-April, 6 weeks before the wedding. This one destroyed what was left of my hope. "Brandon has been researching estate planning attorneys," Rivera told me over the phone. "He's also been in contact with several assisted living facilities asking about costs and availability. Mrs. Harrison, he contacted a facility in Florida and put down a deposit to hold a space. In your name." "He what?" "Sunshine Grove Senior Community. They have a record of Brandon Mitchell acting on behalf of Dorothy Harrison, reserving a 1-bedroom unit starting in August. He paid a $5,000 deposit. The timeline matches. Wedding in June, honeymoon in July, and then presumably they'd convince you to move in August." I felt like I was suffocating. They're planning my entire life. They're going to put me in a facility and take everything. That appears to be the plan. I went home that night and stood in the house Robert and I had built together. I walked through rooms filled with memories, touched walls we'd painted, looked at the garden we'd planted. 2 people I loved were plotting to take it all away. That's when my grief turned to something else, something cold and clear and absolutely certain. I wasn't going to confront them and plead my case. I wasn't going to beg my daughter to believe me. I was going to let them think they'd won. And then I was going to grant Brandon his wish. I would disappear, exactly like he wanted, but on my terms, with my assets, and with proof of everything they'd done. What I was planning would either save me or destroy what was left of my relationship with my daughter forever. But I'd already lost her, hadn't I? To a con artist with a brilliant smile and $87,000 in debt. The question wasn't whether I'd fight back. The question was how devastating I could make their defeat. The day after I made my decision, I called Maggie. "I need an attorney, the best estate attorney you know. Someone who's seen everything and won't judge me for what I'm about to do." 3 days later, I sat across from Patricia Grayson in her corner office overlooking the city. She was in her early 60s, with silver hair and the sharp eyes of someone who'd spent 40 years protecting people's assets. "Maggie tells me you're in a difficult situation. Patricia said, folding her hands on her desk. I laid out everything. The investigation, the evidence, Brandon's history, the plans I'd discovered. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. You want to protect your assets before the wedding, she finally said. I want to do more than that. I want them to think they've won, right up until the moment they realize they've lost everything. A small smile crossed Patricia's face. Tell me what you have in mind. Over the next 3 weeks, Patricia and I rebuilt my entire estate structure. We created an irrevocable trust, transferring all my properties and investments into it. I was the trustee, maintaining complete control, but the assets were protected from claims or manipulation. We updated my will, adding specific clauses about competency challenges. We established a medical directive with an independent doctor, not anyone Emily or Brandon could influence. If they try to declare you incompetent, they'll have to overcome significant legal hurdles, Patricia explained. And if they forge your signature on any documents, that's fraud, criminal fraud. You'd have grounds to prosecute. I want to catch them in the act, I said. I need undeniable proof that Emily knows what Brandon is doing. That's riskier. You'd have to let them think they're succeeding. I know. Back at home, I played my role perfectly. I seemed confused sometimes, forgetful. I misplaced my keys deliberately. I asked the same question twice. I gave them exactly the ammunition they needed to build their narrative. And it worked. They grew bolder. In early May, 1 month before the wedding, Emily came to visit alone. We sat in the garden, and she took my hand gently. Mom, I need to talk to you about something. Brandon and I have been worried about you. Worried? Why? You've seemed off lately, forgetful, a little confused. I called you last Tuesday, and you didn't remember our conversation. You told Mrs. Kowalski down the street that you were meeting Dad for lunch. I hadn't said that, but I played along. Did I? I don't remember. Emily's expression was concerned, but I saw something else underneath. Satisfaction? Mom, I think you need help. More help than I can give from Chicago. Brandon and I have been researching some options. Really nice places where you'd have people around, activities, medical care if you need it. You mean a nursing home, a senior community. There's a beautiful one in Florida, Sunshine Grove. You'd love it, Mom. Pool, garden, organized trips. And you could sell this house. It's too much for you now anyway. You could afford the best care, have money left over for whatever you need. I don't want to sell the house. I know it's hard, but Mom, what if something happens to you here? What if you fall or forget to turn off the stove? Or, who would get the house if I sold it? I interrupted. She blinked. What do you mean? The money from selling it, where would it go? To pay for your care, of course. And the rest would be in your estate for eventually, when you don't need it anymore. When I died. That's what she meant. What if I wanted to give you the house now as a wedding present? Her eyes widened. Mom, you don't have to do that. But would you want it? Would you and Brandon use it? Well, Brandon has mentioned that this would be a great place to raise a family someday, and his job has remote flexibility, so we could potentially move back here. If you wanted us to have it, that's incredibly generous. Hook, line, and sinker. Let me think about it, I said. It's a big decision. Of course. But Mom, don't think too long, okay? We want to make sure you're safe. After she left, I listened to the recording. Her voice, my daughter's voice, talking about taking my house, putting me away, managing my money. I cried for an hour. Then I called Patricia. I need you to draw up fake documents. Transfer paperwork for the house, made out to Emily. I want them to think I'm giving it to them. Fake documents? Documents that look real but have subtle flaws that make them invalid. I want to see what they'll do with them. If they'll try to file them, use them. That's fraud, right? Yes, that's actionable fraud. Then let's see how far they'll go. 2 weeks before the wedding, I left the fake documents on my desk, arranged to look like I'd been reviewing them. I made sure Emily had a key. I'd given her the new one by mistake after changing the locks, telling her I was confused about which was which. 3 days later, Detective Rivera confirmed that Brandon had been in my house. The security cameras caught him photographing the documents, calling someone, smiling. 1 week before the wedding, I overheard the conversation that destroyed the last piece of my heart. Brandon and Emily came for a final walkthrough of wedding details. I excused myself to make tea, but I'd left the recording pen on the coffee table where they sat. "She's actually doing it," Emily said, her voice excited. "Mom's going to sign over the house. Her attorney is supposed to call tomorrow to finalize everything." "I told you she would," Brandon replied. "These old widows are always the same. Lonely, confused, desperate to stay close to their kids. All it takes is a little pressure, a little fear. I almost feel bad." "Don't. She's had her life. This is our turn. Besides, that house alone is worth $2.3 million. Add the investment properties and the trust fund you'll get. We're talking $5 million total. That's generational wealth, Em. That's our future secured. What about the Florida place? You really think we can get her to go?" "She'll go. Once we file the competency paperwork with the court, she won't have a choice. We'll be her conservators, making decisions for her best interest. She'll be in Florida by September, and we'll be here in this house, living our life. And if she fights it?" "She won't. She's too weak, too desperate to stay connected to you. She'll do whatever we ask because she's terrified of losing you. It's actually kind of sad." Emily laughed. Actually laughed. "God, I can't believe this is finally happening. I've been living in that cramped Chicago apartment, working my ass off, watching you struggle with money. And the whole time, my mom's been sitting on millions. Not anymore. After Saturday, everything changes. This is our wedding gift to ourselves." I stood in the kitchen, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, to rush in there and throw them out, to call Emily every name I could think of. But I didn't, because I had something better planned. That night, I met with Patricia, Detective Rivera, and Maggie at Patricia's office. We listened to the recording together. "That's conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse," Patricia said quietly. "With this recording and the other evidence, you could have Brandon arrested. Probably Emily, too." "I don't want them arrested," I said. "Not yet. I want them humiliated. I want everyone they know to understand exactly what they tried to do." "What did you have in mind?" Rivera asked. I told them my plan. When I finished, Maggie was grinning. Patricia looked concerned, but impressed. Rivera just nodded. "It's risky," Patricia said. "If anything goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. I've spent 3 months documenting everything. I have proof of every lie, every manipulation, every crime. I'm not the confused old widow they think I am. I'm about to become their worst nightmare." Over the next 5 days, we prepared. I drafted 2 sets of documents, one containing the complete evidence of Brandon and Emily's scheme, including transcripts of recordings, financial records, photos of Brandon in my house without permission, proof of the assisted living deposit, copies of the fake documents he'd photographed, everything. The other set contained a letter explaining what they'd done and what I was doing about it. We had 200 copies printed, one for each wedding guest. I sold the Victorian house, not to Emily, to a family friend who'd admired it for years, for $2.4 million, closing scheduled for the day before the wedding. The money would go directly into my protected trust. I packed everything I cared about, photos, Robert's things, keepsakes, and moved them into a secure storage unit. I arranged for a moving company to empty the rest of the house the morning of the wedding, while Emily and Brandon were at the venue preparing. And I prepared my wedding gift, 200 ivory envelopes, each sealed with a gold sticker, each containing the complete truth. On the morning of the wedding, I dressed carefully in the mother-of-the-bride dress Emily had chosen for me. I did my hair and makeup. I put on the pearls Robert had given me for our 20th anniversary. I looked in the mirror and saw a warrior. At 3 p.m, I arrived at the country club with Maggie. We were early. The ceremony wasn't until 5. The wedding planner was there, setting up. "Mrs. Harrison, I wasn't expecting you for another hour. I wanted to check on a few final details," I said pleasantly. "Would you mind if I placed a gift at each seat? Just a small token for the guests." "Of course. That's so thoughtful." Maggie and I spent the next 40 minutes placing an envelope at every seat. Each one looked elegant, expensive, like a proper wedding favor. No one would open them until after the ceremony, maybe during the reception. That was fine. I'd be long gone by then. At 4:30, guests started arriving. I greeted them warmly, hugged old friends, smiled for photos. Brandon's parents complimented my dress. Emily's bridesmaids kissed my cheek. If only they knew. At 4:45, I found Emily in the bridal suite. She looked beautiful in her wedding gown, radiant and excited. For a moment, just one moment, I saw my little girl again, and my heart broke all over. "Mom," she hugged me. "You look beautiful. Are you ready to walk me down the aisle?" I pulled back and looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd come from my body, who I'd raised and loved and sacrificed everything for. This woman who was planning to steal my life. "Emily," I said quietly, "I want you to know that I loved you more than anything in this world, more than my own life." Her smile faltered. "Mom, why are you talking like—" "I hope someday you understand what you've done, and I hope someday you become the person I thought you were." "What are you talking about?" I kissed her cheek. "Goodbye, sweetheart. Enjoy your wedding." I walked out of the bridal suite, down the hallway, and out to the parking lot where Maggie was waiting. I didn't look back. We drove away just as the ceremony music started playing. My phone began ringing, Emily, calling repeatedly, but I didn't answer. I'd granted Brandon's wish. I'd disappeared. And in about 2 hours, when the guests opened those envelopes during the reception, Brandon and Emily would discover that disappearing was the least devastating thing I could do. Maggie drove me to her house. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the country club disappear in the side mirror, and felt nothing. No regret, no sadness, just a strange, hollow calm. "Are you okay?" Maggie asked. "I don't know what I am," I said honestly. We'd planned this moment for weeks, but nothing had prepared me for the reality of walking away from my daughter's wedding. From my daughter. Maggie's guest room had a view of her backyard garden. She made me tea, chamomile, like that would somehow fix what was broken, and sat with me while we waited. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Emily, Brandon, Emily again. Unknown numbers that were probably wedding guests or the venue coordinator. I turned it off. "When do you think they'll open them?" I asked. Maggie checked her watch. "The ceremony started at 5. Figure 30 minutes for that, another 30 for photos and cocktail hour. They probably won't sit down for dinner until 6:30. The envelopes are at each place setting, so any minute now. Any minute now, 200 people would learn exactly what kind of man Brandon Mitchell was, what kind of daughter Emily had become. "Do you want to see?" Maggie held up her phone. "My niece Jessica is at the wedding. She can text me updates." Did I want to know? Did I want to watch my daughter's world implode in real time? "Yes," I said. At 6:42, Maggie's phone buzzed. She read the message and her eyes widened. "Jessica says people are opening the envelopes. She says, oh my God, Dorothy. She says Emily's face just went white." I closed my eyes. Somewhere across town, in that beautiful ballroom I'd helped decorate, my daughter was reading her own words played back to her. These old widows are always the same, lonely, confused, desperate to stay close to their kids. "What else?" I whispered. Maggie scrolled. "Jessica says Brandon's trying to grab the envelopes from people, but there are too many. People are reading them out loud. Someone's crying. Brandon's parents just left the head table. Emily's bridesmaids are surrounding her." Another buzz. "Oh no. Jessica says Brandon is yelling at the DJ to stop the music, but the venue coordinator won't let him make an announcement." I imagined the chaos, the whispers becoming shouts, guests pulling out their phones to photograph the documents, the evidence of every lie, every manipulation, every cruel calculation spread across 200 dinner plates like the world's most devastating wedding favor. "Dorothy," Maggie said quietly, reading another message. "Jessica says Emily is asking where you are. She's crying, saying this is all a misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding." My voice came out harder than I intended. "She said those things. He did those things. The evidence doesn't lie." Another buzz. "Brandon just tried to leave through the kitchen. The catering staff stopped him. One of the guests, Jessica thinks he's a lawyer, is taking photos of everything." "Good. Let them photograph it. Let them post it online. Let the whole world see what Brandon Mitchell really was." My phone, I'd turned it back on without thinking, started ringing. Emily's photo lit up the screen. That picture from 2 Christmases ago, when she was still my daughter and I was still her mom, and neither of us knew how thoroughly Brandon would destroy us. "Don't answer it," Maggie said. "I'm not going to." But I stared at that photo until the call went to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text appeared. "Mom, please. Where are you? We need to talk. This is all wrong. You don't understand. I typed back, I understand perfectly. The recordings don't lie. The documents don't lie. You wanted me to disappear, Emily. I'm granting your wish. 3 dots appeared, showing she was typing. They disappeared. Appeared again. Disappeared. Finally. He made me say those things. I didn't mean them. Please, Mom, don't do this. I laughed. Actually laughed. Even now, even caught with irrefutable evidence, she was lying. I texted back, "You laughed, Emily. When Brandon said it was kind of sad how desperate I was to stay close to you, you laughed. Nobody made you do that." No response. Maggie's phone buzzed again. She read it and winced. "The wedding's over. The venue is clearing out. Jessica says at least half the guests have left. The ones who stayed are..." She says it looks like people are choosing sides. Some believe Brandon and Emily, some don't. Let me guess. Brandon's family believes them. Yes. But Emily's college friends, your neighbors, the people who've known you for years, Jessica says they're furious. Mrs. Kowalski apparently called Brandon a snake to his face. Mrs. Kowalski, my 72-year-old neighbor who'd brought me casseroles after Robert died, who'd listened to me cry at 3 a.m, who I'd almost let them convince me was imagining things when I told her Brandon had been in my house without permission. "What about the authorities?" I asked. "Did anyone call the police?" Maggie checked. Jessica doesn't know, but she says a man who identified himself as an attorney approached Emily with a business card, told her she'd need legal representation. My phone rang again. Not Emily this time. Brandon. I answered on speakerphone. "Hello, Brandon." "You crazy bitch." His voice was pure venom, all pretense gone. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed Emily's wedding. You've humiliated us in front of everyone we know. All because you're a bitter, lonely old woman who can't let go. I have recordings of you planning to put me in a nursing home and steal my assets," I said calmly. "I have proof you contacted a real estate agent about selling my house without my permission. I have documentation of your $87,000 in debt, your history of targeting wealthy widows, and your deposit on an assisted living facility in my name. Would you like me to send that to the police, or would you prefer to stop calling me names?" Silence. "That's what I thought," I said. "Goodbye, Brandon. Enjoy your wedding night." I hung up. Maggie was staring at me with something like awe. That was ice cold. He wanted me to disappear. I'm just following instructions. But my hands were shaking as I set down the phone. Because this was it. The point of no return. I'd done what I set out to do, exposed them, protected my assets, escaped their trap. But in doing so, I'd lost my daughter. Maybe forever. "Dorothy," Maggie said gently, "you did the right thing." Did I? She's my daughter, Maggie, my only child, and I just destroyed her wedding day. She was planning to destroy your life, to lock you away and steal everything you and Robert built. You defended yourself. I know. My voice cracked. But knowing doesn't make it hurt less. My phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. I almost deleted it without listening, but something made me press play. Emily's voice filled the room, raw with tears. "Mom, please. I know you're angry. I know I said terrible things, but you can't just disappear. We need to talk about this. Brandon says we can fix everything if you just come back and..." I deleted it. "Brandon says," I repeated to Maggie. "Even now, even after everything, she's still letting him speak for her." "She's 29 years old," Maggie said. "Eventually, she'll have to decide who she believes. You've given her all the evidence she needs. What she does with it is her choice." Over the next hour, the messages kept coming. Brandon's parents, threatening legal action. Emily's maid of honor, begging me to call. 2 of my old teaching colleagues, asking if I was okay. Detective Rivera, confirming he'd been contacted by wedding guests who wanted to file police reports against Brandon. And then, at 8:17, a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Harrison, this is Patricia Grayson. The house closing went through this afternoon. The funds are in your trust account. You're protected. Well done." I burst into tears. All of it. The planning, the evidence gathering, the performance of confusion and weakness, the careful documentation of every crime, had worked. My assets were safe. My house was sold. My future was secure. I'd won. So why did victory feel so much like grief? "What now?" I asked Maggie, wiping my eyes. "Now?" She squeezed my hand. "Now you rest. Tomorrow, you start over. Build the life you want, not the life they tried to force you into." I looked out the window at her garden. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange. Somewhere across town, my daughter was probably still at the country club, surrounded by half-empty tables and the ruins of her perfect day. And somewhere out there was my future, uncertain, terrifying, but entirely my own. For the first time in 2 years, since Robert died and left me adrift, I felt like myself again. Not Dorothy, the grieving widow. Not Dorothy, the confused old woman who needed managing. Just Dorothy, 68 years old, strong enough to fight for herself, brave enough to walk away from people who didn't deserve her love. I disappeared, just like Brandon asked, but I was about to reappear as someone they'd never seen coming. 3 days after the wedding, Emily showed up at Maggie's house. I was in the garden, drinking coffee and trying to figure out what my life looked like now, when I heard the doorbell. Maggie appeared at the back door, her expression tight. "Dorothy, Emily's here. She says she won't leave until you talk to her." My first instinct was to refuse, to stay hidden in this peaceful garden and let Maggie send her away. But I'd spent 3 months gathering evidence, planning my escape, building my case. I hadn't done all of that just to hide now. "Let her in," I said. Maggie hesitated. "Are you sure? You don't owe her anything." "I know, but I want to hear what she has to say. What excuse she's invented this time." Emily walked into the garden, looking nothing like the radiant bride from 3 days ago. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked young and lost, and for one treacherous moment, I wanted to hug her. Then I remembered her laugh. "It's actually kind of sad." "Mom," she said, her voice breaking on the word. "Don't call me that." The words came out harder than I intended, but I didn't take them back. She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Please, we need to talk. We don't need to do anything, Emily. You made your choices. I made mine. There's nothing left to discuss." "There's everything to discuss." Her voice rose, desperate. "You humiliated me in front of 200 people. You destroyed my wedding. You disappeared without giving me a chance to explain." "Explain what?" I stood up, setting down my coffee cup with deliberate care. "Explain how you and Brandon planned to declare me incompetent? Explain how you were going to put me in a nursing home in Florida while you sold my house and spent my money? Explain how you laughed when he said it was kind of sad, how desperate I was to stay close to you." She went pale. You were listening? I was documenting. Every conversation, every lie, every manipulation. I have recordings, Emily. Recordings of you and Brandon discussing your plans. I have proof of everything. Brandon made me say those things. Stop. I held up my hand. Don't you dare blame this all on Brandon. Yes, he's a con artist. Yes, he manipulated you. But you're 29 years old, a lawyer, an educated woman. You chose to believe him when he told you I was declining. You chose to go along with his plans. You chose to lie to me, over and over again. Tears streamed down her face. I thought, he said you were getting confused, that you needed help, that we were protecting you. By stealing from me? By planning to lock me away? That's not protection, Emily. That's theft. That's elder abuse. That's a crime. We weren't going to steal from you. The house would have been mine eventually anyway. We were just what? Speeding up the timeline? Helping me die a little faster? My voice was ice cold. Did you put down that $5,000 deposit on the Florida nursing home, or was that all Brandon? She looked away. I didn't know about that. Liar. I pulled out my phone and opened the email Detective Rivera had sent me. Here's the receipt. Look at the signature line. Emily Harrison and Brandon Mitchell, on behalf of Dorothy Harrison. Your name is on it, Emily. Your signature. She stared at the screen, her face crumbling. He said it was just a backup plan, in case you got worse. He said we needed to secure a spot because the good facilities fill up fast. And you believed him. You signed paperwork to put your mother in a nursing home without ever discussing it with me, without getting a medical evaluation, without asking if that's what I wanted. You're twisting everything. I'm stating facts. I pulled up another file. Here's the recording of you and Brandon at my house on May 10th. Would you like me to play it? The part where you laugh about me sitting on millions while you worked your ass off in Chicago? Or maybe the part where Brandon calls me a bitter, lonely old woman and you don't contradict him? Stop. She wrapped her arms around herself. Please stop. Why? Does the truth hurt? Because it should. You want to know what hurt me? Hearing my only daughter, the child I raised and loved and sacrificed everything for, plot to take away my home, my freedom, my life. You want to know what destroyed me? Realizing that you saw me as an obstacle, not a person. That you couldn't wait for me to die so you could have your inheritance. That's not true. She was sobbing now. I love you, Mom. I never wanted to hurt you. Then why did you? My voice cracked despite my best efforts to stay strong. Why did you let Brandon convince you I was incompetent when you knew I wasn't? Why didn't you question him when he started asking about my assets? Why didn't you defend me when he called me confused and paranoid? I don't know, she whispered. I don't know. He made everything sound so reasonable. He said we were helping you. He said you'd thank us eventually. And I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Because he was in debt. Because he needed money. Because you wanted the life he promised you. The house, the money, the future. And you were willing to throw me away to get it. No, that's not... She stopped, her face twisting. Okay, yes. Maybe part of me was thinking about the inheritance. About what would happen when you were gone. But not like this. Not by forcing you out. Then how, Emily? How were you planning to get my money without me dying or signing it over? Silence. That's what I thought. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. You can't even admit it to yourself. You want to believe you're a good person who got manipulated by a bad man. But the truth is, you chose greed over love. You chose money over your mother. And now you have to live with that. She dropped to her knees on the garden stones. Mom, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I can't take back what I said or what I did, but please don't cut me out of your life forever. I'll do anything. I'll leave Brandon. I'll go to therapy. I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you. Just please don't give up on me. I looked at my daughter, kneeling in the dirt, begging for forgiveness, and I felt nothing. No anger, no love, no hope, just empty. Where's Brandon? I asked. She wiped her eyes. At a hotel. We're not staying together right now. After the wedding fell apart, his parents took him back to their place. I've been staying with a friend. Are you divorcing him? We never got married. After everyone read those envelopes, the officiant refused to complete the ceremony, said he wouldn't be party to fraud. Good. At least someone had shown some backbone. Emily, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I leaned forward. I spent 3 months investigating Brandon. Do you know what I found? You're not the first. 6 years ago, he was engaged to another woman, Vanessa Chen. Her mother owned a chain of dry cleaning businesses. Brandon tried to steal from her, too. Forged signatures, took jewelry, the whole con. The mother filed a restraining order. Vanessa defended Brandon, just like you're defending him now. You know what happened to her? Emily shook her head. She lost everything. Her mother cut her off. Her family disowned her. She ended up bankrupt because Brandon ran up credit cards in her name. Last I heard, she was working 3 jobs trying to pay off his debts. I paused. That's your future if you stay with him. He'll drain you dry and move on to the next target. I'm leaving him, she said quickly. I already told him. We're done. Are you leaving him because you realize he's a con artist? Or because he got caught and embarrassed you? She didn't answer. That's what I thought. I stood up. Here's what's going to happen. I've already filed a police report. Detective Rivera has all the evidence, the recordings, the forged documents, the proof of attempted fraud. The district attorney is reviewing the case. Brandon will likely be charged with attempted elder abuse, fraud, and forgery. They may want you to testify against him. They want me to... Her eyes widened. Mom, I can't. If I testify, I'll be admitting I was part of it. You were part of it, Emily. You signed that nursing home paperwork. You discussed selling my house. You're on those recordings. The question is whether you were a willing participant or a manipulated victim. That's for you to figure out with your own lawyer. You're going to let them prosecute me? Your own daughter? I'm not going to let them do anything. I've given them the evidence. What they do with it is their decision. not mine. I met her eyes. But I'll tell you this, if you want any chance of coming out of this without criminal charges, you'll cooperate fully with the investigation. You'll testify against Brandon. You'll take responsibility for your actions instead of playing the victim. I am a victim. He manipulated me. And you let him. You're a lawyer, Emily. You know better than anyone how to recognize when someone's lying. But you chose not to see it because you liked what he was offering. I softened my voice slightly. I'm not saying you're entirely to blame. Brandon is a professional con artist. He's good at what he does. But you're an adult who made choices. Own them. She buried her face in her hands. What do you want from me? I want you to grow up. I want you to look in the mirror and admit what you did. I want you to understand that actions have consequences and that betraying your mother for money isn't something I can just forgive because you're sorry now that you got caught. So that's it? You're never going to forgive me? I thought about that. About whether forgiveness was even possible. About whether I wanted my daughter in my life after everything she'd done. I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, I can't even look at you without feeling sick. Maybe someday that will change. Maybe someday you'll actually understand what you did and why it was so unforgivable. But that day isn't today, and it won't be tomorrow, or next week, or next month. How long? Her voice was small, broken. How long until you'll talk to me again? I don't know. Maybe years. Maybe never. That depends on you. I walked toward the back door. I need you to leave now. Maggie will show you out. Mom? Wait. No. I turned back one last time. You wanted me to disappear, Emily. You got your wish. The woman who used to be your mother, the one who would have done anything for you, given you anything you asked for, loved you unconditionally, that woman is gone. You killed her when you decided money was more important than family. What happens next is entirely up to you. I walked into the house and closed the door behind me. Through the window, I watched Emily collapse on the garden bench, sobbing. Part of me wanted to go back out there, to comfort her, to fix this somehow. But I didn't. Because for the first time in my life, I chose myself over my daughter. I chose my dignity over her tears. I chose truth over comfort. Maggie appeared beside me. That was brutal. It needed to be. My hands were shaking. She needed to hear it. What if she doesn't change? What if she goes back to Brandon? Then I'll know I made the right choice walking away. I watched Emily finally stand up and walk around the side of the house toward her car. But I think she will change. She's scared right now. Scared of losing me. Scared of legal consequences. Scared of what people think. But eventually, that fear will either break her or rebuild her. That's not my responsibility anymore. The sound of Emily's car starting, then driving away, felt like a physical weight lifting off my chest. It's done, I said quietly. Maggie squeezed my shoulder. How do you feel? I thought about that. How did I feel? Sad, relieved, angry, free, grief-stricken, empowered, all of it at once. I feel, I said slowly, like I can finally breathe. 6 months after the day my daughter's wedding exploded, I woke up to the sound of waves instead of the creak of old floorboards. My new home is a small condo on the Oregon coast, 3 blocks from the beach. It's nothing like the Victorian house Robert and I restored, and that's exactly why I chose it. No ghosts in these walls, no memories hidden in the molding, just white paint, sunlight, and the sound of the ocean rolling in and out like a steady, patient heartbeat. In the mornings, I make coffee and sit on the balcony wrapped in a cardigan, watching the gulls fight over scraps in the parking lot. I still think about Robert, of course. Grief doesn't vanish. It just changes shape. But now, when I picture him, he isn't lying on a golf course with strangers doing CPR. He's sitting across from me at the table, grinning as he tells me I finally did what he always said I needed to do. Protect myself, even from the people I love. The legal side of everything unfolded slowly, the way legal things do. Detective Rivera kept me updated with calm, measured phone calls. The district attorney's office decided to charge Brandon with attempted fraud, attempted financial exploitation of an elder, and identity misrepresentation. They had enough to go after him even without Emily, but they offered him a deal if he cooperated. He didn't take it. He hired a lawyer, of course, a loud, blustering man who tried to paint me as a vindictive old woman who couldn't accept her daughter growing up. But there's one thing con artists always underestimate: paper trails. You can charm people. You can manipulate emotions. You can gaslight until words mean nothing. But bank statements and recordings and signed deposits don't care how charming your smile is. The case never made it to trial. 2 weeks before the first hearing, Brandon's lawyer quietly approached the DA's office about a plea. Brandon pled guilty to 1 count of attempted financial exploitation and 1 count of fraud related to the nursing home paperwork. In exchange, the other charges were dropped. He got a suspended sentence, 5 years of probation, mandatory counseling, and a permanent record that will follow him to every job interview and loan application for the rest of his life. Is that enough? Some days it feels like a slap on the wrist. Other days, when I think about how he'll never again be able to slip so easily into another wealthy woman's life without that record popping up, it feels like justice. Emily wasn't charged. The DA's office decided that her cooperation, her willingness to hand over her phone, and her statements about Brandon's manipulation made it difficult to prove criminal intent beyond a reasonable doubt. Legally, she walked away clean. Morally, she'll be serving a sentence for a long time. We haven't spoken in 4 months. At first, she tried. Text messages, voicemails, long emails where she swung wildly between apologies and accusations. "You ruined my life." In one paragraph, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness." In the next, "I read them all. I answered none. My lawyer Patricia helped me update my will again. Emily is still in it. She'll receive a modest amount when I die, enough to start fresh somewhere if she learns anything from this. But the bulk of my estate will go to charities that actually help vulnerable people, and to a scholarship fund for women over 50 returning to school after divorce or widowhood." It felt right, like turning something poisonous into something useful. A month ago, an envelope arrived with Emily's handwriting on it. A real letter, not an email or a text. I almost threw it away, unopened. But curiosity is a funny thing at my age. I've outlived too many chances to ignore the ones that still show up in my mailbox. In the letter, she didn't blame Brandon. Not once. She didn't defend herself. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just told the truth. She wrote about how tempting it was to believe she deserved an easier life after working so hard. How quickly she let resentment grow when she saw me living in a $1 million house while she and Brandon squeezed into a 1-bedroom apartment. She wrote about the thrill she felt the first time Brandon said, "All this will be yours someday," and how she pushed down the part of herself that whispered, "Yes, but not like this." She wrote, "I became someone I don't recognize, and I did it with my eyes open." At the end, she didn't ask if we could start over. She didn't ask if I still loved her. She just wrote, "I'm going to spend the next years trying to become a person you could respect again, even if you never see it. I hope you're safe. I hope you're happy. I'm so sorry, Mom." I cried so hard my chest hurt, but I still didn't call her. Maybe that sounds cruel. Maybe, watching this from wherever you are, you're thinking, she's your daughter, life is short, forgive her while you can. And trust me, those thoughts keep me up some nights. I'm 68. I've buried a husband. I know better than most how quickly time runs out. But here's what I've learned. Forgiveness is not the same as erasing consequences. I can forgive Emily in my heart, the little girl she was, the teenager she used to be, the woman who got lost in her own fear and greed, without inviting her back into my life before she's truly changed. Love does not mean allowing people to hurt you over and over again just because you share their blood. So for now, forgiveness looks like this. I don't wish her harm. I genuinely hope therapy helps her. I hope she builds a life that doesn't depend on other people's money or approval. I hope someday she can tell this story without hiding from herself, but I also hope she always remembers what it cost her. As for me, I learned something I wish I'd understood long before Brandon ever walked into my house. I used to believe my value came from what I gave other people. My time, my money, my support, my endless willingness to put myself last. I thought being a good wife and mother meant saying yes, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. Now, I know better. My value doesn't depend on whether my daughter wants me in her life, or whether a charming man calls me Mom at a country club bar. It doesn't depend on a Victorian house or a bank account or the illusion of a perfect family. It comes from the simple, stubborn fact that I am still here. I survived widowhood. I survived betrayal. I survived my only child looking at me and seeing nothing but an obstacle to her happiness. And I fought back. If you're watching this and feeling that same cold knot in your stomach, wondering if the people around you are really who they say they are, wondering if that concern about your finances is something darker, listen to me. You are not crazy. You are not paranoid. You are not just confused or too emotional or ungrateful for questioning things that don't feel right. Trust that knot in your stomach. Trust the way the room goes quiet when you walk in. Trust the way their eyes slide away when you ask for details. Trust the voice in your head that whispers, something is wrong, even when everyone around you insists everything is fine. And if you find out, like I did, that the people you love most are willing to hurt you for money, protect yourself. Talk to a lawyer. Talk to a financial advisor. Talk to a friend who isn't afraid to tell you the truth. Document everything. Ask questions. Say no. Change your locks if you have to. Move if you need to. Walk away, even if it breaks your heart. You deserve safety. You deserve respect. You deserve to live the years you have left without constantly looking over your shoulder, waiting for the next betrayal. Where are you watching from today? Are you sitting in a house that suddenly feels a little less safe than it did before this story started? Have you seen small signs? Missing papers, strange bank withdrawals, helpful relatives pushing you to make big decisions fast? If you have, please take this as your sign. Don't wait for a wedding day revelation. Don't wait for the moment your own child looks you in the eye and tells you the best gift you could give them is disappearing. Disappear on your own terms. Step out of their trap. Step into a life where you get to decide who has access to your home, your money, your heart. Surround yourself with people who cheer when you stand up for yourself, not people who flinch when you stop being easy to use. I'm 68 years old, and in many ways, I'm starting over. I have a smaller home, fewer people in my life, and a bank account that I watch more carefully than I used to. But I also have something I didn't have before all of this started. I have myself, and that, I've learned, is the one gift no one gets to take from me ever again. If my story felt familiar, you're not alone. Share your experience in the comments if you feel safe doing that. It might help someone else see what they've been trying not to see. And if this helped you even a little, please like this video and subscribe. You never know who needs to hear that it's okay to choose yourself, even when the people you love don't choose you back. Because disappearing from someone else's life doesn't mean you vanish. Sometimes, it's the first step to finally being seen.